Hey guys, Verbal Engine 95, recording live from the Lake County prison cell. So it is I think, last week of Pride Month, and honestly, I'm a little tired of the bit. So, I mean, this one counts. This is one I'd been planning on doing for a while, not because of Pride Month. It was between this and, I think I said this last week, it was between this and Amity versus Asami, and I just really didn't feel like doing Amity versus Asami, so this is probably the next best one. This is Poison Ivy from DC, and Zyra. I think her name is Zyra. I don't know. I'm not actually a League of Legends fan. I've never actually played it. But, yeah. And I mean, I guess technically they're both non-bi. Well, no, Poison Ivy's definitely a female. She's in love with... She's a lesbian because she's in love with Harley Quinn, right? And Zyra, I guess, would be non-binary. But again, I'm a little tired of the joke at this point. So, this is more, you can consider this a normal episode if you'd like. But there you go. Anyway, this is a little tricky because on one hand, both of these characters are very, very similar, and I don't know if I've ever spoken sorry. I don't know if I've ever spoken directly on this, but like, sometimes I don't want to do fights where the characters are like almost identical, because it just makes it that much harder to like actually determine a winner. And also, like, I want the characters to be similar more like as characters. Like, I want their like origins and like their role as a character and their like, you know, the themat and their storylines and the thematic parts of them to be similar, rather than like they're both plant ladies. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of boring to me, to just be like they have similar powers. You know, because as I've said before, you can find a million characters with similar powers. That's not necessarily, you know, a reason for a fight to happen. For me, you know, when the characters themselves, like, when the, you know, their motivations and the plot and their origin and everything are similar, that's infinitely more interesting for a fight. But I will say, this, you know, so that's one thing that made the fight a little difficult. The second thing is that Zyra also does not really have much information on her. She's kind of left very ambiguous and mysterious by design, I think, in League of Legends. So it's a little hard to really gather any strict information on her, at least until Arcane comes out with an episode for her. So there might be a little bit of speculation. If anyone knows any like deep lore reasons behind you know, these sorts of things, then maybe they can tell me, but I'm gonna go with what I see, pretty much. So Poison Ivy, I'm gonna start with her because I know a lot more about her. Poison Ivy, Dr. Pamela Isley, was originally well, she was some sort of scientist, whether it's a botanist or a biologist or what have you. You know, she studied plants very, very seriously, until I believe in most cases it's a lab accident. There's usually some different interpretations, but in most cases it's a lab accident that chemically kind of altered her, turned her into sort of a metahuman, and gave her the ability to not completely, but manipulate plant life, in the sense that she was able to you know, more or less create plant life, you know, on her own. Now, in some incarnations, she like creates the seeds ahead of time and like plants them and they grow very quickly. In some cases, she literally can like touch the ground and create plant life on a whim. In most instances, she herself is mutated to be part plant, like her, like she doesn't eat, she like just needs photosynthesis to keep her. In some cases it's like, I know she's in most cases immune to poison, or immune to just most toxins in general. But within her powers, she has the ability to, at least the plants she creates, she can manipulate, like they're at her command almost completely. She views them as children, pretty much. And so she cares for them incredibly. So if somebody steps on a plant that she created, it's like you're hurting her child. And yeah, in most cases, she can produce spores and toxins. A lot of the time, it's mind control based ones. We've shown, at first it was believed that this only works on men, but then they actually found out that her pheromones and her mind control toxins specifically, she has pheromones that kind of influence the way people think, and this can work on men and women. And if she, usually in the form of a kiss, because she's the temptress, if she kisses you or blows spores in your face or something, she can mind control you directly, and that's usually not limited to men either. In many cases, she's been shown to be able to like surround entire buildings, and in some cases like entire cities, in order to with plant life, but usually these are like extreme cases. She's even mind controlled the likes of like Superman before. Sometimes this is with the help of like kryptonite, and sometimes it's not. And she's also incredibly, she's incredibly smart, not just from a scientific standpoint, but she is also very clever, and, like I said, she is a seductress, or at least plays the role of the seductress, because she's a bit of a feminist. She likes using men to obtain her goals. She likes using men as tools, pretty much. Yeah, but very, very powerful Batman villain. Doesn't really see too much outside of, the Batman world, but she is, she's Poison Ivy. I didn't really have to look anything up. I just kind of, who Poison Ivy is. On to Zyra. So, again, details might be a little sketchy because I'm not super familiar with the character or the franchise. So, Zyra is essentially the collective consciousness / life force of a bunch of plants from a specific section of woods in the whatever the world is called, I forget, Zartor or something, I don't know, in League of Legends. And during a great war, a sorcerer kind of cast a spell that ignited the natural fumes of this forest and created a magical explosion, and the magic laid dormant and seeped into the earth for hundreds of years until eventually the collective consciousness of these plants gave itself a physical body, and that became Zyra. She became a being unknown to the world by that point. She is humanoid. She's a living plant, but also humanoid. And, she essentially has a very similar goal as Poison Ivy, which is humans basically exist to be food for the next age of life, which is the age of plants, right? And she has the power to do it because not only can she also create plant life pretty much at will, plants that are completely subservient to her, she can also do things like plant plants inside of people and have them grow from the inside out, killing them in the process. She can teleport through the ground using her plants, essentially, right? She can have her plants, she can kind of be sucked back into her plants and then appear in another one, giving her a pseudo form of teleportation. A lot of her plants are incredibly deadly, like things like thorned vines and flower cannons that spit seeds, and these seeds, like I said, can be either planted inside somebody, or they can be used to plant other plants, or they can just be projectiles. A lot of her plants actually interact with each other in the game. That could just be a game mechanic thing and not like a lore thing, but usually it'll like create a rage mode. They can heal each other. Things like that. However, there does seem to be a limitation to how many plants she can create at once, which leads me to believe that, which for me I think is the reason that she tends to use people as hosts, because personally I think, because we know that she's magic in nature, right? We know that she has magical properties to her, which is how she's probably able to do this. So I would think that the number of plants she can create is probably limited to her pool of magic, which is why she ends up using other people as hosts, so that instead of using her magic to grow the plant, she just does it the old-fashioned way, just using the host as food, pretty much. But yeah, so she is, other than that, there's not really much known about her. We don't really know any end game for her. We don't really know too much of, how she wants to go about bringing in this new age of plants. We just know that she's there. And that, again, I think that, I don't know if I've said this, but I think that is a better way to have that character, honestly. I think she is much more intimidating as a character, and she should be intimidating in my eyes, right? She is like a boogeyman. She is a warning, kind of, to, in her own way, she's like a warning to humanity of, this is what you get for interfering with nature. And if we understood her completely and her motivations, we wouldn't need to take that message seriously. So I think there's certain times where simplicity is key, and that character is made better by us not knowing anything about her other than the fact that she's out there and she wants revenge for the planet, basically. I mean, that's kind of powerful when you think of that's Godzilla. That's a bunch of characters like that I think are better the less you inform the audience of them. But that's neither here nor there. What we're talking about is who's going to kill each other. So going into this, Poison Ivy has a few succinct advantages, right? She has a body made up of, pretty much, she doesn't have as many of the human weaknesses as most people would. She does, I believe, have a healing factor of some sort. And unlike Zyra, she doesn't seem to have any limitations on creating her plants, right? She can just kind of do it whenever. We know that her plants themselves can be limited, as in most cases, like, she's created giant, like, Venus flytraps and stuff before, but we know that, like, those take longer, and also that they, in order to, like, force her plants to grow, it physically exerts on them, which she doesn't like doing, because, again, she views them as her children. And also that, like, it takes an amount of energy to do that. Whereas Zyra doesn't really have that issue. She can just magically empower her plants, but she does have a limit to how many plants she can have at once. And also, we've never seen Zyra use plants with the destructive power that Ivy has. Like, yes, her plants are lethal, and they can kill pretty much anyone with, minimal effort, but, they're not destroying buildings. So, the other advantage that I think Zyra has, though, is that she would be being a plant and not, like, being a plant and not, like, capable of love or infatuation, or having pheromones to mess with, for that matter. I mean, plants do have pheromones, but not in the same way that people do. She probably would be unaffected by Ivy's, like, spores and toxins and pheromones and whatnot, right? At least the ones that would try to mind control her. The poison ones, that's up for debate. Now, that's an interesting part of this fight that I think needs to be explored. Ivy is a specialist on plants. She knows all about the plant world. Probably not as much as Zyra, considering Zyra is not just a plant, but also is essentially the plant world. She's like the life force of all the plants in that area. But that's the other thing, is that Zyra is, like, from a bunch of magical plants, from, like, a forest that doesn't exist on Earth. Like, they're species of plants that don't exist as far as Ivy's concerned. Now, whether or not that means that she wouldn't be able to gather information from them and know how they work and know what, like, how to manipulate them, that's different. The other thing to take into consideration is, as far as I'm aware, these two can only manipulate their own plants. Like, they can't take control of each other's plants. Ivy, in some incarnations, can turn regular plant life into her plant life, but, like, Zyra's never shown that ability, and Ivy usually doesn't show that ability. She usually just grows plants out of nowhere. So it's going to be like a, mine versus yours fight. That being said, I would say Zyra has some advantages, right? And might have, with things like teleportation and things like, like all these pseudomentary abilities and all these things that she can, like, use to, like, her plans are designed to be more lethal, I would say, and more effective, but, and she might not have to put in the effort that Ivy has to put in to grow them, but Ivy has shown to be capable of just having a much higher power output, and it's also, it's at either the expense of her plants or herself, but I don't think it's a matter of, like, she's shown to be capable of doing that. So, like, how is it really a war of attrition if she has the power to, like, end the fight? The only thing that I can think of would be Ivy's unwillingness to hurt other plants, but considering she's fought opponents that were basically plants. She's fought Swamp Thing and the Floronic Man, I'm pretty sure, at some point. So, like, that to me means that she's willing to hurt other people like herself. Willing to hurt just about anyone, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I would say Ivy has this, but this is a good fight, to be honest with you. I mean, I know I said I don't like it when the opponents are too similar, but I think it makes for an interesting debate, if not a more difficult one. But it doesn't make for a more fun idea, I think, in most cases. But this is one that I thought was pretty good, and it's not because Harley fought Jinx. Like, that's just pure coincidence. But anyway, Verbal Engine 95. See you guys next week.